Good morning, witches. I'm Jennifer. Good to see you. Thanks for watching the replay. On Tuesdays at 10, me and Christina from the Old Tree Shop come live and talk about all the things. We're going to talk about retrogrades and eclipse season. Bringing Christina on. She's coming. Hello.
Hello. All the things.
All the things.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well today. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
Doing all right. Little I don't know. I had a kid that woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. So that's never fun, is it?
No.
Yeah.
We get to kind of meet them as they are. Just like us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a shower and then I'll deal with you. And then he wouldn't eat breakfast. And I'm like, whatever, dude. I go, so you're not getting anything till lunch, period.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, how was Mother's Day?
You know, it was really lovely. I actually took a drive to go see my mom. I haven't seen her in a long time.
Nice.
And they live out a couple hours away, right? They live like an hour and a half away now. They used to live really close.
That's
now they
right.
live out.
They
moved out to
house.
Harstein. Yeah, They built a house. It's a beautiful house. My dad basically has had this dream his whole life to build a house, and I'm so proud of them. And it all happened right before Mercury went retrograde. Like everything closed. It's just like, and then for them to be safe in their home during this time is
nice.
Super blessing. So I got to take a long drive by myself while my kids and my husband stayed home and cleaned the house.
What?
Yeah. So I sang songs and cried, and I just had a very cathartic time. It's a beautiful drive.
Nice.
So yeah, how about you? How was your Mother's Day?
My Mother's Day was great. Let's see. Started off my morning with some slippery nipple infused coffee. So
yeah.
And then got a couple of Mother's Day presents. One I'm wearing, and I love it. And then the boys actually, we have the backyard, and then we have the trail that goes down to the creek. Mm-hmm. And I've always just wanted a spot right by the creek so I could just chill. Yeah. And so the boys cleared out a spot for me down there.
Oh, yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah, right by the creek. And they cleared the trail so I could get down there easier. And
I love it.
Then they took that and extended it all the way up to the public trail. So now I can just walk right through my backyard and get onto the trail behind my house. So it was a really, really good day. And we watched The Dark Crystal, which I've wanted to watch for some time.
It's so funny when you revisit things like that, right? And like, I remember that being so magical. And did you watch the new one or the old one?
We watched the new series.
Yeah.
Which we're still watching.
Yeah. And, I haven't finished that yet, actually.
I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so rich with metaphor about the ways that we are, the earth.
Yes.
The way that we're mining its resources, the way that we're using its resources, the way we're treating each other.
Yes. Continuously taking.
Yep. And the power struggle that is dominant in culture.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I'm really enjoying it. And then to end it, I watched Valley Girl, which is one of my all-time favorite movies.
I think I've watched that.
When Nicolas Cage was a baby, and
who?
Nick Cage.
Oh,
he was a baby.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, what? I can't believe you've not seen Valley Girl.
I'll have to see that. My husband always makes fun of me because there's just some movies. I mean, he's a very big classic movie person, and there's certain movies like I've never really seen, and he's just like, what?
Well, it's so funny because now 80s movies, they're probably considered classic.
Oh yeah, they're cult classics for sure. Listen, We are vintage,
Well,
my friend. We
after
are.
it was made in 1983, and they just recently released it for sale
That's
on like
funny.
in the Netflix and all that. So my
Yeah,
husband did it for me, and I got to lay on the couch, drink a beer, and watch Valley Girl. It was fucking. My mother's was fucking great. I
that's
had great.
amazing. Nice. Well, welcome, Sophie. I see Sophie's watching. What's up, the Evergrove?
Tiny Tina.
Yes. Share this. Tag people that you might think would want to hear. We're going to talk today about astrology for the most part, correct? So we
Yep.
decided. And I just tried is the operative word. I just tried to record because I drop a podcast every Wednesday. So usually Tuesdays I will record them. I just rambled on for an hour about astrology and it cut me off. I didn't know that it had cut me off. And I didn't know I had rambled for an hour. And my struggle, especially right now, Mercury's not in retrograde. I do usually pretty good during Mercury retrogrades because I'm so mercurial.
Yeah.
And because it helps me slow my brain down. But it basically, the whole hour that I recorded is just shit and I have to trash it and redo, I think. So I'm
But isn't that the epitome of retrogrades? Trashing and redoing it. So there you go.
The redo. And so, yeah, Saturn, this week is full of beginning retrogrades, which means that we've been in these pre-shadows for all of these retrogrades for some time. And so, yeah. Do you want to, how do you want to begin? I pulled a card.
I want to talk about the pre-shadow really quick.
Okay. Yes.
I have found during some retrogrades that the pre-shadow and post-shadow are worse than the fucking retrograde itself. How about you?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, as I notice where those dates fall, it goes, there's like this, oh. So yeah, for me, like I watch those pre-shadows, post-shadow times.
Right.
And it's one of those where if I'm not paying attention there, I go definitely more crazy. And maybe it's because of the focus attention that we put on that actual retrograde time.
Right.
Where I am diligently, really minding myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I pay attention to when the pre-shadows are, it helps me to mind myself there too.
Yes, I do.
Hello, Healing Ila. You are, yes, my friend from Italy is here. Nice to see you. Nice. Yeah, so Saturn, pre-shadow, post-shadow. As we learn, like, here's the thing is I think, retrograde language is becoming more and more sophisticated. We used to kind of really just be like, oh, it's this bomb that goes off and it's a, something that's, crazy. What's up, Amber? And what's happening, I think now is really beautiful because as the psychology of spirituality has kind of taken it's starting to mature, right?
Yes.
We are realizing that these things are happening for us, not to us.
Correct.
And that's like a really important way to, I think, ground yourself in this work, right?
I think that you have to, because if you...
What else are you going to do?
Think about it this way. If you're walking around with the mentality that these things are happening to you, it's kind of victim mentality too. But not only that, when you're saying these things are happening to me, you're not taking any responsibility for what's going on. You're not taking any responsibility for trying to create change. You're kind of just being like, you know what, these things are happening to me. I'm going to go drink a bottle of wine on the couch.
Yeah, I can't control it. And
exactly.
Which is not to say that you can control it, but you're not taking, the tendency is to, what's that?
You can control your reaction and you can control your outlook, right?
Yes. Well, and there's certain things that you can, if you're not open to receive, I think it's really, because the act of trying to control that which you can't control has a, you know, it's that 0.1 error of masculine dominant force, which says I can manipulate and create my universe, which is part of the truth, but definitely not all of it.
Yeah.
The polarity of it is that you must receive what's coming to you and transform it. And so there's this alchemy that the feminine, as we get more feminine language, I think this is becoming more of a, it's just so juicy because we are, you know, whether you're man or woman, like it has nothing to do with gender necessarily, but that masculine, feminine of the reception, being open to receive, and then knowing that you control your thoughts, feelings, actions from that receptive place.
Right.
And that puts you back in your power.
Right.
And so, receiving.
It's like choosing to receive some friends and choosing to release others.
Yes. And that, friends, beliefs,
yes,
culture,
exactly.
right? And, you know, I think receiving, to me, like it feels like, because receiving is an RE word too, like, right? So let's, as this live evolves, as we go through this, you know, notice where we're talking about RE words, because all of those words have to do with retrogrades.
Yes.
But receiving versus maybe, if you want to put them on a spectrum, rejecting. And the respect that we give to certain things, and the way that we discount or you know, or put away from us and say, you know, because even if it's troubling to you, and in fact sometimes if it's really troubling, then it's definitely like you need to look at that, right? If it's really, if you're reacting, if there's a reaction that is so violent within you and you can't even take a breath before you react,
there's something going on.
There's something
going on. And think about these two together, respond and react. You can respond to something, meaning, okay, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to take this in, and then I'm going to respond to it. Or you can just react to it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's that big difference there.
Well, and having responsibility for your reaction, because some things do warrant a quick reaction. However, you have to actually tune your tools. This goes back to like the basic work of like remembering who you are, what you're not negotiating. So responding in a way that's, you know, because our brains always try to make things as simple as possible. You know, they make our brains make generalizations and want us to like do those snap reactions. If you haven't done any work to really understand why you would react in a certain way, then you're definitely going to just be using basic, you know. But I believe that as I've gotten older, the things that I react to have been contemplated. And I still question. You know.
Well, I think the day
but some of those things happen quicker.
The day we die. I never want to stop questioning. I always want to question. No.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's interesting where
the biggest
where I allow myself to react is when I don't know, I guess it is a response, but there's certain things that now I react very quickly to because I've done the work. But when I say that, it sounds so egotistical. That's interesting.
It's not though.
But I do think that there are things that we should react quickly to, but it takes a lot of consciousness to know where that place comes from, right? Yes. If you're in your heart, if you're in your truth, if you're in your power, when you react quickly, it's a powerful reaction.
Yes.
And then the question is always, well, did that serve me? You know, and you might look retrospectively always to that action and say, well, was that a true, authentic response from me, or was that a reaction based on the moment of being triggered and having that kind of all of a sudden everything it's that focused power that something has over you, and you're pushing against it, you know. So
I hear you.
Yeah, those are my roundabout thoughts on that. Those are those circular cycles. Well, so I wrote down, so, you know, yeah, pre-shadow, post-shadow, those are important times. And so when we talk about that, there's a certain amount of degrees. I'm like, should I always feel like it's really important to, I'm like gonna draw a diagram. I should have visual aids sometimes. But so like, here's an astrological wheel, very, very rudimentary. But so if you're saying, if every sign, and we'll just do Capricorn, because Capricorn is where a lot of things are happening in general.
Right.
Every sign has 30 degrees. You can't see that really. 30 degrees in that piece of pie. Every piece of pie is 30 degrees. And a retrograde period happens between certain degrees, right? So when you hear, for instance, Saturn is going retrograde from 1 degree Aquarius to 25 degrees Capricorn.
Yeah.
And so it has 30 degrees, but it starts at 0. So there's that too. So there's this very small slice of that 30 degrees, which is really like 360 degrees in your chart. It's a very small place where basically Saturn, for instance, is going to go wash, wash, wash. You know, it goes over it 3 times. It's like, and so, and especially with Saturn, it's trying to teach you something. You know, it wants you to master something. It wants you to remember that there's a legacy there, that there's something to be responsible for. You know,
Right.
so talk about, you know, being responsible is such a Capricorn lesson in general, the maturity of responsibility, right? Not just responsibility as like, meh, but like the responsibility. I have the ability to respond in alignment with who I want to be in the world, how I want to show up.
Well, and also because it is in retrograde, it doesn't always talk about learning about external. A lot of times it talks about learning about the internal, and definitely taking responsibility for that internal self that we've either been hiding or feeding. You know what I mean? So, I mean, either way, you know. I happen to enjoy the retrogrades. I mean, there are some times when Mercury will sneak in and kill all of my electronics. I don't like that. But other than that, I kind of enjoy the retrogrades because I look at them as my do-over. I look at them as my second chance. I look at them as, okay, I'm going to have the ability for a little bit of quiet right now and really do some soul searching and weed some more shit out, because we're never done weeding that shit.
No, never ever.
Yeah. So
I know when it's like when we talk about, I mean, this is really retrograde and eclipse season. There's kind of these seasons where the eclipses come in, and it's usually through retrograde time, so they coincide quite often. And yeah, they are. They're this time. It's a liminal space. It slows things down, and because those planets aren't just cruising by, not that Saturn really cruises anywhere. It moves very slowly, but not as slow as some, right? I mean, Pluto went retrograde in April on the 26th.
And little baby Pluto moves really slow.
Show. I mean, her. I'd like to rebrand all of the planets as female, but that's another project entirely. Pluto, she's like Kali, Shiva.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's a good, you know what? That's a really good analogy. I mean, because you talk about putting ends to ends. Like Kali comes in and she's like, oh, you wanted to end that, but you wanted to end that on your terms? No. You called me in. So we're going to end it on my terms. And it's really going to be ended, you know?
Yeah. And again, that's not about giving power to that force. It's just saying like, it's a surrendering to, because I think we get our hearts involved in like everything being so precious.
Yes.
That we forget the impermanence of being. and impermanence feels so scary, and we don't, speaking of Capricorn, because Capricorn loves to be able to count on something, right? So all of these transits through Capricorn, by the way, Pluto is there too, doing its retrograde thing in Capricorn. It's like, do you really need this system? Do you really need to, hold on to that?
Well,
Do
think
you
about
really
it this
want to
way.
drag that around for the next generation? Do you
Look
want
at
to
it
pass
this
that lead weight to your daughter?
like, yes, and it is karmic, but think about it this way as well. There are projects that a lot of us take on, right? And because we take on those projects, we get sentimentally attached to those projects. And
Yeah.
those little eggs then become our babies and this and
Yeah.
that, And when Pluto comes into play, especially with Saturn as well, Pluto and Saturn together are like, hey, I know you really
They're like,
this.
hey, no, they're not,
Hey,
but yeah, go
we
on.
need to talk. Like, I know you really like this project that you birthed, but
Yeah.
it's not taking your soul anywhere and it's not doing
Yeah.
you any good. So we're just gonna fucking kill it. And that's
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
And then you're left with, okay, well, this project's dead. Now I need to come to terms with that. And I need to be real with myself and say, hey, uh, you know, I only held on to that project because egotistically, I was attached to that project because I made it. However great, amazing, shitty, whatever,
Yeah.
I made it. Therefore, I was attached. That's why I didn't want to let go. Ego. Instead of saying, okay, you know what? It's consuming too much of my time. It's not bringing me happiness,
Yeah.
and it's not doing anything healthy for this world. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and let it go.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things that come up for me in my mind that I recognize Pluto energy having taken care of, that I'm so grateful for. One of them being, certain chores around the house that I, at one point, insisted to be done a certain way in order for them to be good.
Virgo.
And certain ways that my children or house, my children would behave or my house would look. And that would mean that I'm a good mother, that I'm a good wife.
Mm-hmm.
All of these kinds of expectations that had nothing to do with my own, number one, my own expectations or goals for myself,
Right.
but just like this kind of programmed way that we learn to validate and feel successful, right? We all want to feel successful. In order to do that, I actually had to uncover what being successful actually meant to me rather than going around trying to find. And so it's that internal, and there's a lot of retrogrades where that, that internal, you go inside in order to really find meaning and truth. It's like, oh yeah, when I hear that voice in my head that tells me that thing needs to happen, whose voice is that?
Exactly.
Whose voice is that? And it so often was not mine. And I was like, wow, I'm pacing like on this treadmill. I have this metaphor for myself now where I got on I remember watching, like, it's almost like that Train Spotting where you're like watching and you're like, okay, I'm going to get on. I'm going to hop on. Okay, I'm getting on. And like when I was about 25, I just fucking hopped right on. And I started galloping, and it's just like, this fucking sucks. Like everything that's passing me by, my creativity left. I stopped writing. I stopped really studying astrology. I stopped really practicing. I looked at some pictures this last weekend for Mother's Day. I made my mom like this video, and I was looking through all these pictures of different houses and places that I've lived in, and all the little altars everywhere, which I wasn't calling altars at the time. And recognizing like how I was like organizing, my life as a Virgo would, with a lot of intention and a lot of kind of sacred spaces. And yet there was no consciousness of that happening.
And was there really enjoyment of those altars, or were they just there because you wanted to set them up? You know what I mean? It's very
or like that I wanted it to be performative in some way. Like I think of people's which is beautiful, right? People's houses are kind of their temples. They kind of create an homage to their lives. They have family photos, you know, that family photo wall that's so popular with the Karens. It's like, this is an ancestral altar.
Mm-hmm.
Don't fucking kid yourself that you're not practicing ancestor worship by putting up your family wall, and just act like it's, let's focus on making sure all the frames are the right color and size, and
Right.
that some of them are black and white and some of them this way. There's these, it's really interesting, that blur point. And Saturn itself going retrograde is this edge walker. Saturn is really like, it's about boundaries. And if you're at the boundary, if you're on that boundary, you can of course see the next kind of summit, right? And so we're being asked right now with this retrograde to really look at, because it's happening in that last few degrees of Capricorn. That's that mastery decan. And then it's just popping into Aquarius, because we're going to go through Aquarius school on our Jupiter steeds, right? Some of us are going to hop on really fast steeds with Jupiter. So, and then we're also going to be pulling that cart behind us, Saturn's cart.
Some of us are going to hop on and fall off and then have to hop back on again.
I just had the mechanical bull come up as a visual in there, So it's like, you choose your steed, because we're heading into the Aquarian age, and I'm really hopeful, and it's always 50%.
Yeah, girl. I mean, I've seen some awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much as I would prefer.
This has been the case my whole life. I've, and I know there's so many of us who thought we're ready right. for this next version of humanity. We're ready for the rising of the feminine, and to really kind of reclaim our humanity over this kind of power hungry structure. What does that mean? And, all the underbellies, Pluto's doing its work.
Yes.
Pluto's doing its work. It's good work.
It is good
and
work.
It's taking its time, much, much longer time. I thought 20 years ago, which there was an impact happening 20 years ago. 1998 was a huge reset point. And as we hit that end of the Aztec calendar and all of these things, that was a huge turning point. And I know all of us who are still on the path, or who left the path, who got on the conveyor belt and have like been thrown off or jumped off or whatever. It's a reawakening of a really deep kind of inner journey, and realizing all of that was necessary for me.
Yeah.
That's what I take from this. Nothing's in wrong timing. No time has been wasted. Nothing's been.
I think that part of these retrogrades as well. I mean, I feel that with the retrogrades, especially now, and Venus and all that stuff, it's really about not only just getting in touch with yourself, but it's also about acknowledging the endings of things that we've done in the past, but also acknowledging those things and saying, okay, yeah, that was a shitty decision, or probably shouldn't have done that. And saying, you know what, if I wouldn't have done that, if I wouldn't have made those decisions, I wouldn't be where I am today. So therefore, even though this stupid shit that I did, I'm going to have to say, hey, stupid shit, thank you so much. And I'm going to cut the karmic cord now, so I can continue on this path. And thank you for leading me to the point that I am today. And that, to me, is really what all of these are about. And I feel as though if we don't cut that karmic cord, and we continue on with carrying that inner guilt from mistakes from the past, decisions, all that shit, we're not going to be able to ascend. So cut it.
Yeah. cut the cord. Well, and you know, when you talk about karmic endings, and I made the post about, you know, yeah, and many astrologers are having this language around, because Saturn is the lord of time. It is, you know, the archetype of karma. There's this coming back around, and it's closing a huge cycle.
Yeah.
And it's like a, you know, it's like a 27 or 29 year cycle. And it's not just personal, although it always is. It's collective.
Yes.
And so a lot of the things that, I mean, at least my generation, we were told lots of things had been taken care of. You know, equal rights had been given, and yet we're still fighting for civil liberties for certain kinds of people. And, you know, they have to argue their realities every single day. Oh yeah, you know, everybody's prosperous. We're a first world country. We have all this abundance, and yet there are more homeless people and more kids who are, you know, going without food, and all of these kinds of societal issues that are completely fucked.
Yeah.
In a first world country, you know, and that's what, you know, because we're getting ready to move into where, you know, it will draw that line. It's like, if you're not human, you're not relevant. If you don't want to fight for everybody to be able to show up and be inside of everything, if you want some people to be out there because you don't get them,
that's a problem.
That's a fucking problem. and you don't get to decide. You don't get to decide.
And that is,
you know,
really
who's valid and who's not.
Things that I'm hoping that all of these retrogrades put an end to as well. Either you're going to open your eyes or you're not going to open your eyes.
And it is a choice.
Exactly.
You have to choose.
Exactly. 100%. 100%.
And then you get to deal with whatever consequence comes after that.
Yeah.
And just because you choose to move with the astrology that's teaching us that inclusivity is king or queen, and we're moving into this Aquarian age, just because you choose the quote unquote right side of history, or just because, doesn't mean it's going to be fucking easy either, or comfortable. Because even, you know, like as a white lady, I still have to deal with my own racism. I still have to deal with my own biases. I still have to deal with my own generational programming and all the karmic debts that are intrinsically part of my being.
Well, no change is comfortable. No change is easy. It's making that conscious decision that, okay, you know what, no matter what happens, this cumulative change needs to happen. So I'm in this to win this, and I'm going to help bring change about. And that is the decision that needs to be made, you know?
Yeah, the commitment of it. And that's the thing, is Saturn wants to say, like, are you in or are you out? Saturn doesn't want, you know, Saturn is like, I'm not going to, and if you want to take language, it's so funny, like this language from if you want the blessings, you're going to have to, you know, you have to fucking do the work.
Exactly.
And there's a song I actually used on my mom's thing. It's like, I would never have listened to this song, but it was a suggestion on my Spotify for mothers. Oh no, that's another one. So the Highwomen, who is Brandy Carlisle, she lives out in Maple Valley, by the way. So she's part of this band called the Highwomen. If you haven't heard of them, I completely recommend them. But they have this song, it's called Crowded Table. And it's like, if you want to have a garden, you're going to have to sow the seeds.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to baby those seeds. You have to wait for them to germinate. You have to actually do the work of making sure the soil's in the right, you know, nutrient rich way. You know, there's no way that things are going to get to that blooming place.
Correct.
Hi, Raquel. So
not without your hard work, your care, your love, your attention.
A lot of it is just presence and attention.
Exactly.
And, you know, society's really good these days at distraction and buffering. We have a lot of ways to distract ourselves from reality, even in quarantine. Quarantine, I think, has really created a situation that is beneficial, where everyone has to actually face what their lives are actually made up of.
Yeah.
when you feel like your freedoms have been taken away because you can't go to Target, not that that's, you know what, Target's a beautiful, wonderful place. And that is ridiculous as fuck. So don't listen. When
Exactly.
it's like what is it that we're basing our freedom on? If any
Entitlement.
circumstance outside of you changes your feelings about freedom, that's not freedom.
And the thing is
That's
it's more
not.
so about entitlement. That's what these freedoms are being based on, is
Yeah.
what people feel as though they're entitled to have.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's
And
just exposing elitist culture. And I'm part of it. I'm not separate from it. And you know, retail therapy is a real thing. Call it what it is. Don't fucking delude yourself that you are in any way, form, or fashion like being present just by doing those things. It's okay. It's not a problem. Unless you don't just question it, wonder why, understand why, and
acknowledge
then
it. And
yeah.
then think about, how would this be if I changed this up? You know what I mean? I mean, just it's like putting the wonder out there. It's going on this journey of, okay, changing your life. You know, how would this be if I didn't shop at Target every
Yeah.
week? You know
Or
what I
even,
mean?
yeah, like the stockpiling. Some of the things that are really interesting to me about human nature is the stockpiling of things to help create security. Just notice the way that you go about your life trying to create solid security and permanence in a
Yes.
world that is impermanent.
You do that in your movie voice.
In a world where castles built out of sand fall to the ocean, people are stockpiling, thinking that creates solid matter. It's such an illusion. And that's okay. Notice that that's our human nature. We try and do that. And good things come from that. Good things come from solidarity. Capricorn loves that.
Good things can come from it if you acknowledge.
Yes.
That you're fucking
Yeah. What's interesting, so the Venus retrograde's happening in Gemini, and Venus being, I always think of Venus like Aphrodite. Like Venus and Mercury are like dancing, and they're like fuck buddies, and they like hang out sometimes in the sky. And when there's a conjunction with them, it's like, ooh, saucy. It's like really good stuff. Like if you were born during like the Mercury Venus conjunctions, they happen like once or twice a year, right? It's like, ooh, because they're just like chasing each other, and then they retrograde, and then they're just like, what's and then they, you know, and they're just completely like, oh, they're lovers. You know, by the way, Aphrodite is a lover. You know, she's fucking all of them. She's like that divine priestess where her subjects go to worship her pussy, and like, you know, she's like in. What's that?
She's the epitome of sex. She is
Yes.
the epitome of celebrating that enjoyment that comes
the
over your
sensual nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about like Venus going retrograde in Gemini, where that's like Mercury's house, or one of them. Mercury has two houses because that's how Mercury rolls, right? Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini. Amber says, I went to a gathering about institutional biases. We all had to close our eyes and picture CEOs, astronauts, college professor, president, etc. We were then asked who we pictured in those roles. So eye-opening. Yes.
Wow.
Like looking at our biases is super important. And then noticing where, you know, what's absent, what's missing. And by the way, that doesn't make you a terrible person. It makes you a product of this culture that we live in. So don't kid yourself that we don't live in a racist culture. We do.
Well, I really think that, of course, it doesn't make you a bad person. And I mean, you know, the racism, yuck. But I mean, acknowledging the fact that, okay, these are the people, I am biased, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
acknowledging that opens the doorway to allow you to say, okay, do I want to change this or do I not want to change this? And so you come to that why, you know, where you're going to have to
Yep.
say, okay, I'm going to take this path to change, or I don't want to change yet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
I
I
mean,
mean,
everything is a choice. You know,
yeah. And everything
the
is,
lessons
you
that are being,
acknowledge that
the
it's a
lessons that I
doorway.
think are being taught right now as everything moves into Aquarius is about inclusivity, right? So it's moving from that exclusive kind of thing where maybe you think of one singular kind of person as all those things, when all of a sudden you can think of, you don't have to, you don't actually have to negate that that kind of person can be that thing, but all of a sudden you open up and surrender the possibility, especially since Jupiter's, you know, Jupiter's going retrograde too. It's like, let's open it up. Let's surrender to the all-encompassing multiplicity of what is actually occurring.
Yes.
And open up the stories to involve everyone's story. Notice that just the, you know, the storyline is singular. The center is a singular center, but that's not how the actual universe works. Just
Correct.
like saying, you know, my sun sign is this, that tells me nothing about, you know, I'll be on these things that, oh, my sun is in this. It's like, that means nothing almost, right? It's like, well, what house is it in? Is it conjunct to something? Is it, you know, what's your rising sign? What's your
Right.
moon sign? Where's your Venus, right? And so, not
Right.
to say that, but this is a multiplicital universe. Nothing in nature happens in a vacuum. In fact, monocultures are very unhealthy for the soil. You know, so like if you're only growing one thing in ground all the time, you grow the one thing, you grow the one thing, right? You grow the one thing, you grow the one thing, the soil becomes depleted. And after a while, you get pests, you get lots of shit that you can't handle
Mold.
because, yeah, mold, yeah, all sorts of things will come in because you're monocultured your soil and it's stripping all the same nutrients out of that soil. But retrogrades for Mercury, for Venus, while all this other stuff is happening, and we're gonna, you know, Venus being in Gemini for this long in general is quite fantastic. It's like, how can you communicate your love? How can you really communicate your values? How can you actually express through your sensual nature what it is to be human to others? How can you
How can
communicate
you,
your sensual nature?
well, how can you also express self-love? How can you change the way you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
You know, how
Noticing
can
those
you change
qualities of
the
your
way,
thoughts.
yeah, how can you change the way you envision yourself when you look at yourself? I mean, Venus is such an amazing planet and such an amazing energy. And then you bring
Mm-hmm.
the Gemini in, and then you have all that brain power and all that.
Yeah. That
And
that open-mindedness, you know, that's what Gemini
yeah,
offers, this open-mindedness that is unparalleled.
yes. And then changing that mindset towards a loving mindset, a caring mindset, a compassionate mindset. And a
Yeah.
lot of it comes down to the communication that we use, you know?
Yeah.
So,
What are the words we're using to define,
right.
you know, and are we naming it, and what meaning are we giving that name? And is there a discernment? I mean, as a, you know, I always say, like, there is a difference. And my husband will always say, like, that's the same thing. And I'm like, no. You know, because there's, you know, two words that have ish the same meaning. And like, to me, they're very different. The vibrations are different. So what are the vibrations of that communication? And, you know, um, all these things are coming up for me in terms of like judging myself, which is my Virgo. It's like, Jenny, you're pretty fucking intense and lots of people don't like you. That's what my mind is telling me right now.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. So allow
Yeah.
that Venus Gemini energy to come in and say, you know what? So you're having this moment where you want to share these things. That's a beautiful thing. It's all about communication.
Yeah.
Why not embrace that? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And
Yes.
we've got to start speaking differently to ourselves, about
Yeah.
ourselves, and about
Yeah.
others. Enough is enough,
Yes.
you know?
Ooh, that the the Saturn retrograde while Venus retrograding, I feel like if you notice that you're arguing for your own limitations all the time, this is a way to bring love to that and say, wow, whose voice is that?
Right.
Whose voice is that that tells me that I'm only this powerful, I'm only this
Exactly.
beautiful, I'm only this good, I'm
Exactly.
only this, I'm only this, I'm only this.
And
So
how do I get back those dreams of, and the telling myself that I'm capable of doing anything that I want to do. I'm
yeah.
capable of doing anything that I set my mind to doing because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
free spirit and I can do whatever the hell I want to do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So I mean, we've got to start communicating to ourselves differently and stop putting ourselves in these goddamn boxes to where we feel
Yeah.
as though we're blocked and we can't get out. There are
Yes.
no limitations. There are no
Yeah.
limitations as to what we can actually create and do in this world.
Yeah.
So let's have fun, yeah?
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And as you do that work for yourself, it's easier to keep other people out of boxes too. You know, and if it's really hard to look inward and understand how you're talking to yourself, a good litmus test is to see how you're talking to other people or judging them. So if you're saying, oh well, this person acted this way and I'm making it mean this thing, you know, there's a lot of ways that rubber and glue situation, you can
Yeah,
really kind of understand how you're talking to yourself by the way you confine or write scripts for others.
you bet.
So there's an interplay with that, and I think the other part of this whole eclipse season, we're gonna have these eclipses during this time, and eclipses are really closing karmic stuff too, and we're having the first one in Sagittarius in a really long time.
That's in June,
Um,
right?
yeah, June 5th.
Yeah.
I wrote it down actually so June 5th, we're having a full moon eclipse in Sagittarius. And this is because the lunar nodes have shifted. So we've been having all of the eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn. The lunar nodes have shifted, and so we're going to start having them in Gemini Aquarius. That's this new axis. So the fact that Venus is retrograding through Gemini too, there's this extra kind of message coming through of like, you know, this the value of communication and communicating clearly, and also listening, because
Yes.
conversation isn't just spewing, it's what's the quality of our listening. And again, listening to our own minds, listening to our own thoughts about ourselves, but who do we listen to? What is the, you know?
I think that I definitely agree with you on the listening and not just listening, but hearing and trying to put yourself in that person's shoes that's talking to you. You know,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that Venus quality of like
yeah,
appreciation. Yeah.
exactly. And compassion. Um, to really understand someone, you have to imagine yourself in their shoes, you know? And if you don't, you're never and even then you don't fully understand.
No,
But
it's almost
if
like
you
challenge
don't,
accepted, right? Like when you say yes to that, like if I love that as kind of like challenge accepted. I think actually, you know, I've done that. I do that a lot. That's how I get all my compassion. That's how I get all of it. Uh-oh. Ooh. I
oh,
think
it
I
might
had
be me.
some, okay. I don't know, but I turned off my Wi-Fi because I'm on data now. But yeah, like we as humans are getting new language downloads all the time about trauma information, how our brains work, um, how we can include others in our reality in a compassionate way. Are you here now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. But yeah, that appreciation and putting yourself in other shoes is a huge, amazing practice.
Yeah, it is. And
for
it's not
creating
an easy one.
compassion.
It's not an easy one, because think about how scared we are of our own lives sometimes. And then
we don't even want to be in that.
Right.
We're going to Target.
Say, right. And then, exactly. And then to say, you know what, I'm going to try and put myself into your shoes now. And holy fuck, I can't deal with my own heels and you're wearing 10 inchers. You know what I mean? So it's tough. But when you really do that and you take the time to do that and you make the choice to do that, that's when you start understanding the people in this world a little bit more. And you also start understanding how compassionate and how empathetic that you can be. You have the ability to be.
Yes.
You know?
Like there's that capacity that you don't know until you test it.
Correct.
And I think it's really easy to discount and dismiss other experiences just because, you know, we learn to define ourselves by what we're not.
Right.
You know, I mean, and that's part of Saturn's medicine, by the way. But, you know, by drawing boundaries and saying like, I'm not this, so I don't do that.
Yes. Or I'm not this. And guess what? That's okay.
Yeah. And that's just my preference.
Yes.
You know, noticing that every choice you make, it's a fucking choice. You're not that way because blah, 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 all your stories. You're that way because you're making choices. And if you're thinking that if choices were made for you, then you can start to understand how you might take your power back from that.
Correct.
Because if you're giving your power away in that way, you're giving your power away in other ways that are unconscious, and that's fucking with your matrix for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
So these retrogrades have a lot to show people. If people are willing to open their eyes, their hearts, and their minds to receive that information.
Yes.
You know, and it's not easy. It is scary. But think about how amazing this world could be if we all did acknowledge that and decided to make even the most teeny bit of change.
Yeah. Yes.
In our lives.
We're going to get cut off.
Yes.
I want to share the card I pulled this morning for, you know, just for the retrogrades for this time. And I used the Archetypes deck by Kim Krans. It's an amazing deck. And these are like archetypal wisdom that comes through. And I pulled the Pilgrim.
How pretty.
And I want to read this because it's amazing. Okay, so the Pilgrim, the wanderer, the traveler, the apprentice. Even in the stillness of meditation, the pilgrim feels the movement of the heart toward what it loves. We all have a deep longing to answer the call, to get unstuck. What are the obstacles between you and the door? For the pilgrim, an outward journey is always an inward journey. This archetypal wanderer seeks wisdom, experience, and meaning in the farthest reaches of the globe and the deepest regions of the spirit. Others will wonder when the pilgrim will settle down and claim a more conventional life. But the pilgrim knows that the heart belongs in motion. Where there is motion, there is freedom, expansion, and growth. Responsibilities, social conventions, and logistics lull us to sleep, and soon the pilgrim becomes veiled in the slumber of the day-to-day. Yet when this archetype awakens, it rallies our sense of adventure and leads us out the door toward a new reality. With the pilgrim at your side, you will never lack courage, nor do you need every amenity. Travel light, travel soon. Your spirit needs it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I pulled one.
Yes.
I pulled the 9 of Pentacles.
Oh, yeah.
So, and so what I'm going to, with this reading with the 9 of Pentacles, especially with all the retrogrades and the pilgrim, that journey that you're taking.
Yeah.
To find that abundant foundation within ourselves and outside of ourselves, we need to make sure that we release. When we talk about the Pentacles, it's about that foundation. And by foundation, it's family, home, health, career, money, all of those things. That's your whole foundation. So when you get the Nine of Pentacles, that's about abundance. So to receive that abundance of feeling of whole and solid and safe, we have got to allow ourselves to release and go on that journey of outward, inward. You know what I mean? And then that brings us that foundational abundance.
Yes. Well, a Nine of Pentacles, along with that pilgrim, it reminds me of, it's like, talk about karmic endings.
Yeah.
You know, the Pentacles is so earth, it's earth, right? And the nines are always like, everything's wrapping it up. Let's wrap it up.
Exactly.
And so it's like, what is, you know, here's a good question that I was asked one time when I was doing moon work. And I can't remember if the moon asked me this or someone, but it's like, what actually have you outgrown? And you just haven't noticed. It's like those laws that still exist that have really crazy things. You can go, there's a website where it's like, here's laws that still exist.
Oh my God. So crazy.
I mean, there's still places you can burn witches, you know? So like, just because they never took that shit off the books, even though no one believes it anymore. So what are those things? What is it needs to wrap? Let's wrap it up. Let's name it. Let's cut the cord. Right. And because that's holding you in a place, that's why there's this stuckness. That's why there's no ease in the slower life.
Well, that's also why universe needs to come in, and universe comes in and shakes up that ground.
Yeah.
Because
and it's like, here, I brought you these huge fucking scissors. Can you use them? Are you gonna?
Please? Because I'd like to fucking move forward.
Because I'd like to go
forward.
Exactly. Can you do that? That's
so let's just call these retrogrades the wrap up time. Let's just wrap it all up. Let's acknowledge it. Let's take that journey inward. Let's wrap it up and let's release the fuck out of it.
Yeah. Yes. And if you're looking for support in all of that, I know both of us are doing things. I have some openings for readings right now. I have a couple spots. If you want to know where this stuff is happening in your chart and want to do some astrological work with it, I have some spaces. So reach out to me.
I have spaces for readings.
Yes.
My readings are, they take you down the healing path. So if you do want to find out what the hell is going on inside of you that maybe takes precedence as to releasing, just come to my page, man.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I appreciate you, and I'm so excited. And
happy retrograding.
Yeah, happy retrograding. I'm a huge retrograde fan.
I know, so am I.
I'm so excited about it.
So am I. I'm gonna see what kind of downloads I get during this. Retrograde, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Anyway, I'll see you next week, my darling.
Yep, I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye,
Love you.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.